The celebrations of mankind lead to the failure of the same.
Preparing to meet the king.
And what did Xerxes' house look like?
All of this and more coming up next on Quick Study Television. Stay there as we continue in the Bible. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Rod Hember.
I'm Janice.
This is Quick Study Television program. It is a great delight to have you with us today as we study through the program. And I want to tell you about what we're studying today. As a matter of fact, we are introducing the book of Esther. Esther chapter 1 through 3, where we are discovering Esther chapter 1 in verses 1 through 15, the party or the celebration of man, which leads to the failure of man. And this is a party that the man throws for his 127 provinces. It's very interesting as we study this. It's all coming up in just a moment. Here's Corey with Bible history and archaeology. Corey?
Today we are taking a look at one of Persia's royal cities, Susa. Now, Susa is where the history of Esther played out.
And of course, Susa is available today for many, many people to go if you, well, I don't know if you want to go to Iran, but if you have the chance to go to Iran and sometime it opens up, you can see it. What do you have for Do You Know?
Well, do you know how many months of beauty preparations did each young woman go through to prepare to see King Ahasuerus?
All right, so Corey will answer that later. That and more coming up. Stay there.
Now, the Bible in the book of Esther sets the stage for the historical account of Esther, and it puts it in the Persian city of Susa. Right now, you and I are going to explore the ancient citadel at Susa, the halls where Esther would have walked. The city of Susa was chosen to become the winter capital of the Persian Empire by King Darius the Great. Darius ruled only 8 years after Cyrus the Great, with the 8-year interim being filled by Cyrus's son. Darius ruled for 36 years and established 3 capital cities with royal palaces. He began the famous Greek wars that would be continued by his son, Xerxes, of the Book of Esther. And he had interaction with the people of Judea. The book of Ezra, chapters 4 through 6, record how Darius honored the decree of Cyrus to allow the people to rebuild the Jerusalem temple. The historical setting for the book of Esther is the royal palace at Susa built by Darius, and the book of Nehemiah begins also in the palace complex of Susa. The ruins of Susa's palace have been excavated. Findings conclude that it was built on top of the ruins of the old temple district. This new royal district had a massive gatehouse, a pavilion, an audience hall, and, of course, a large palace covering 38,000 square meters. A defining feature of the palace was uncovered fallen in a courtyard by its entrance, glazed brick reliefs. Patterns of warriors, archers, animals, and tribute were immortalized on this brick palace, along with bricks inscribed with Darius's name and passages attesting to his greatness. There was a 9-meter wide wall that surrounded the entire complex and was also decorated with brick reliefs. Along with the audience hall that would have seen Esther as she waited to risk her life before the king, Elamite texts have been found that describe Susa as a city of textile production, trading and selling beautifully complex tapestries. In Esther chapter 1, it's recorded that in the now excavated courtyards of the palace were hung extravagant, decorative linen tapestries. There is this common misconception that we know everything that there is to know about certain ancient empires or ancient cultures that have passed. For example, the Roman Empire, or the Persian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, even the Assyrian Empire. But the truth is that that's not right. We don't know everything that there is to know. However, when we find artifacts like this and when we're able to unearth palaces, it really does add a whole new dimension. Other than physical remains of buildings, all we would have would be written descriptions and written documents of those, which are equally as valid, but they are definitely a different dimension than being able to see the places where these people walked.
You know, that's interesting because we study history on the program every day, and a lot of people, they don't know the history. They don't understand the history when you talk about the Persian Empire or any of that. And we study it. We make a purpose of making sure we understand it and know it. And it's interesting what Corey says. So that's interesting. Keep that in your mind. And by the way, you can go to BibleDiscoveryTV.com. By the way, that's our website. And when you go there, there's a beautiful place where you can donate, and we need your donations and we need your help pretty bad. And so if you can help us in any way, $5, $10, whatever, any way will help. Just make sure that you give in any way you want. BibleDiscoveryTV.com. The history of the book of Esther is fascinating, with the trappings of a brilliant novel. Now, the book claims the ways of the Jewish people in exile, living under a brutal dictate. The names mentioned in Esther are historical and they're real. This story is real. Here we see that the composer of the book was probably Jewish, since the reason for the celebration of the feast is explained. Superheroes know the truth about this book. It is said that God is not mentioned in this book, but he is mentioned in the subtle truth.
Esther chapter 1, 1 through 15. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this was the Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the citadel, that in the 3rd year of his reign he made a feast for all his officials and servants, the powers of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces being before him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days in all. And when these days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in Shushan the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white and blue linen curtains, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple on silver rods and marble pillars, and the couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble. And they served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other, with royal wine in abundance, according to the generosity of the king. In accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory, for so the king had ordered all the officers of his household that they should do according to each man's pleasure. Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abatha, Zethar, and Carcass, 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown, in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men who understood the times, for this was the king's manner toward all who knew law and justice, those closest to him being Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Myukan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who had access to the king's presence and who ranked highest in the kingdom. What shall we do to Queen Vashti according to the law, because she did not obey the command of King Ahasuerus brought to her by the eunuchs? Esther chapter 1, verses 1 through 15.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. This is Quick Study Television, Bible Discovery TV. We are talking today about the celebration of mankind in the universe of the earth, actually. The whole environment is interesting. And as we open this up in the book of Esther, we learn ourselves how the celebrations of mankind work, with alcohol and with all kinds of things, and what is expected, and then how God takes it over. And he is able to move in that area and make opportunities for, in this case, a young woman who is an orphan, really being raised by Mordecai, Esther, in the land of Persia. Now, this is interesting. It's the exile of Israel, and it's fascinating. So we look at the overview. It's strong attention. I love this particular passage. Our reading assignment is Esther chapter 1 to 3, and I want to draw your attention to that. That is, you read that, that's part of our chronological Bible study. So when you read it, it becomes part. Our focus now is on Esther 1, verses 1 to 15. There's a lot of reading today, so let us focus on the first passage of Scripture as we concentrate on it. Now, this is Esther chapter 1, verses 1 to 4. Now, it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, that this was the Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. He was a big man. In those days, when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was Shushan, or in Shushan, that's modern-day Susa, in the citadel, that is in the 3rd year of his reign, he decided to make a feast for all of his officials and all of his servants. The powers of Persia and Media, and the nobles and the princes of all of the provinces being before him, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom in the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days. In fact, 180 days in all. That's a big party, 180 days for all these principals and all of the people of the provinces, and he is glorifying himself in all of this. He's partying in all of this, which brings me to an interesting point as we focus on this. A true celebration of power in man's mind. In man's mind this is what Ahasuerus developed in his kingdom. So Ahasuerus says, I am going to show you my great power. And he has this party, which he celebrates, and everyone celebrates and worships him and all that. Now, underneath the surface, this is an interesting play which God can get a hold of. Satan already has a hold of it, but God can get a hold of, because God is supposed to be the one worshipped, not man. He's worshiping himself. Interesting. We go on to verses 5 to 8. It says, and when these days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in Shushan, the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white, blue linen curtains fastened with cords, and fine linens and purple cords and silver rods on marble pillars, and couches of gold and silver on the mosaic pavement of alabaster and turquoise and white and black marble. And they served drinks, interesting, they served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other, with royal wine in abundance, according to the generosity of the king. Now, in accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory. So for the king, he had ordered that all the officers of his household, that they should do according to each man's pleasure. This is interesting. There's no limit, and you don't have to drink. But people became excited, and it is interesting today as we discover this in the reading assignment. A true celebration of alcohol is here. We establish in the party and in its host, it was how men celebrate. I want to tell you something. How God celebrates is in a great worship service where there's no alcohol. But when men celebrate, they need something to free up their spirits, which actually ties up their spirits, and it's called alcohol. I want to tell you something. It is very dangerous. Now, this example is the example of man's parties. Let's go on to the last part because it's interesting. And as we look at 9 through 12, Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace, which belonged to the king, Ahasuerus, on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine. What does that mean? It means he was drunk. Well, he and Muhammad, Biztha, Harbana, Bigtha, Abagatha, Zethar, Carcass, and 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus bring the Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown in order to show her beauty to the people and to the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. But I want to tell you something. Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. His anger burned within him. That's how it ends up. Now here's what happens at the end of a man's party, a party sponsored by men. A true rejection of man's power. A true rejection of man's power took place because of the decision of the queen. Now we know, as we read along in this passage, that opened the way for Esther. But what I want you to understand is that when man throws a party, no matter how great it is, it always ends in a problem. Always ends in a problem. But when God throws a party through worship and through celebration, it always ends in glorifying God. There's no problem. So keep that in mind next time you go to worship and next time you think about how to be happy and praise God.
The time of Persian dominance in the ancient Middle East really represents a very large and significant chunk of the history of Judah and Israel. Right now, you and I are going to explore the different kings of Persia mentioned in the Bible. The time period of Persian dominance in the Bible ranges from King Cyrus the Great, who united the Persian Empire and conquered Babylon, to Artaxerxes I, 4 kings later during the lives of biblical figures Ezra and Nehemiah. The Bible's history covers these 5 Persian kings from the point of view of the exiles. Cyrus the Great was prophesied by Isaiah and Jeremiah as a rescuer of the people of God, which ancient records and findings in archaeology have upheld as truth. Cyrus pushed the Persian Empire to the borders of Greece in the northwest to the Indus River in the east. He instituted the first documented system of governing that allowed freedom and support of the religions of conquered people. There were benefits to living under the rule of this new king, yet very swift punishments for the smallest act of rebellion.
The next king of Persia was Cambyses II, Cyrus's son. He is not mentioned in the Bible and only ruled for 8 years before his sudden death. His main course of action was to spread the empire by conquering Egypt. Cambyses' replacement as king was a member of the royal family, Darius. Darius reigned for 36 years, and one of his decrees is recorded in the Bible. Noteworthy in his reign are his reorganization of the empire into provinces, his inventive monetary system, building projects, and his specialization of the Persian army. Darius then began the famous Greek-Persian Wars. Xerxes I, seen in the biblical book of Esther, inherited the throne from his father Darius and ruled for 21 years. He continued the attempt to conquer Greece, but he too ultimately failed. The final king of Persia mentioned in the Bible is Xerxes' son Artaxerxes I. During his 40-year reign, Ezra and Nehemiah returned to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple and the walls.
The most important thing in today's focus is understanding the Bible. The Bible is the key book that transcends countries in the world. It tells us the way in which the world is headed. Quick Study TV is designed to make the book the premier document. We do that through many ways. One of the primary ways is through media. Now, the Bible is a 32-page print companion every month that is unique in presentation. Every guide is original or new. No guide is the same. We recommend that you get a copy of this today. Write to P.O. Box 150, Murrysville, Pennsylvania, 15668-0150. In Canada, write to P.O. Box 456, Orangeville, Ontario, L9W5G2. You can call us on the phone and reserve your copy today. Call 724-733-8336 or 519-940-8338. And remember, you can get a hold of the Bible commentary on the website, BibleDiscoveryTV.com. Thank you for staying with us and joining us. Janice and I are here to help you as we walk through the Bible chronologically this year, which is kind of interesting, actually. But here's what we're going to study next time on Quick Study. We're going to focus on Esther chapter 4 through 6, a very important passage, and it's important that you understand the cry to God demands a work of truth, even if it means your life. We'll talk about that and more the next time on Quick Study Television. Now, you have an interesting question today. So what is that question? Because it's interesting.
Well, do you know how many months of beauty preparations did each young woman go through to prepare to see King Ahasuerus? And of course, if you have never read this in the book of Esther, we have lost Queen Vashti. She made a decision. Out. And the king was very upset, so Queen Vashti is out. King Ahasuerus or King Xerxes is looking for a new wife. And so women are being prepared. So how many months did they have to prepare before they could see the king?
Okay, so the girls, they have to get ready, you know, for this. So
to see the king.
They're getting themselves prepped up, Corey. They're getting all prepped up now, and they have a certain amount of time to do that. How long is it?
Okay, I know this because it's intense and outrageous all at the same time. It's 12 full months, a year of beauty treatments. 12
months.
That's right. Now, do you know how those months were divided?
Yes. Okay, so the first 6 months, they were experiencing treatments with myrrh, the oil of myrrh. And then the second 6 months, it was just various oils and spices and things like that.
All right, so that's interesting.
She's right.
Really? So, I mean, you've got all this going together, and it's happening. That's pretty cool. I tell you right now, that is excellent. I wanted to take some time and tell the people about why we need the support and what's going on.
All right.
The program here today, and we just have a minute, so I want to explain this. Everything that you see on the television program is done by Quick Study Television by free will donations. So the picture you're looking at right now, our salaries, everything is done and paid for by your free will offering. Now, it's important that you understand we have no grants. We have absolutely no money from anywhere else. It is only the money of viewers just exactly like you that support us. And so if you can help us, that is great. Do not assume that a little bit is not enough. $5, $10, $25, whatever the Lord puts in your heart, support today. God has a way of showing himself when men try to hide him. A unique countrywide beauty pageant is introduced because the queen chooses not to do what the king has asked. It is this explicit display of man's way and not God's way that the Lord introduces an amazing confrontation of divine justice upon the pleasures of man. You see, God brings Hadassah, better known as Esther, into the mix. There is great strength for life when we pay attention to God. When we do not, we bear the consequences. So with that we pray, Lord, I choose to pay attention to your will and your ways in my life. It's time for our Strengthen Your Mind segment, and today we have a great Bible quote for you. I've focused on these Bible quotes for the last part of the year. Where does the Bible say, "Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth"? Now that's kind of a generic one, and you might say, well, I don't know, but that is the New King James Version. The New King James Version of the Bible. If you think you know the answer, go to BibleDiscoveryTV.com. Click on Strengthen Your Mind, and it'll get there. It'll be great. You're going to be excited about that. But I want to tell you something. Jesus Christ has brought this program to you. He's alive and he's real. Oh, they killed him on the cross, but he rose in the flesh. And if you believe that, if you need somebody to believe today, if you're out of all of your options, come to Jesus Christ and give your life to him and say, Father, forgive me. I give you my sin. I believe you rose from the dead, and help me today. Thank you for joining us today on Quick Study. Remember, the Power Guide, a print companion to this program, is available. You can find it at BibleDiscoveryTV.com. That's BibleDiscoveryTV.com. Go there, write to us, call us, or use it online.